Welcome to Worthy the Podcast, where we have conversations about what it means to feel worthy and what happens when we don't. I'm your host, Jessica Raimondi. Okay, welcome back to Worthy the Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Raimondi, and today's episode is just you and I'm pretty excited about it actually. So we have begun this new year in 2026. And I'm sure, like many of you, I have had some goals and strong intentions as to things I want to start, habits I want to create and break, new ventures, new skill sets that I want to learn, new ways of caring for myself, fitness goals, career goals, right? There's a lot of things that I would love to see myself start, learn, and implement. And I was thinking about kind of the New Year's past and the things that I have thought about doing or even just throughout the year, right? Things that I've committed to, said that I wanted to do, and then fell off, right? That starting that great strong 3 weeks. And again, it could be the New Year resolution. It could be something that you get really excited about that you want to start or imply anytime during the year. It's like that strong start. And then life happens, right? We get out of our routine. Maybe we're traveling, we have family in town, or, we miss a day and then we beat ourselves up. And so we don't go back the next day. And there's just nothing worse, is there, than that feeling of like disappointing yourself, feeling like you let yourself down. And on the flip side, like there's just nothing like that feeling of achieving, completing something, feeling that you're capable, right? Feeling that you're competent and you followed through. And the reason this feels so good and the reason it feels so bad is because discipline, the word discipline, which we're going to talk about today, is required of us when it comes to these new ventures. And although discipline has a negative connotation, which we will talk about, it also is a true act of self-love. I know, but it is, because when we do follow through and we do put the time and energy towards ourselves in pushing ourselves in one direction, in learning something new, in achieving, we build self-trust. Simple as that, right? We learn to rely on ourselves. That is so important. We learn to trust ourselves. We learn to rely on ourselves. We learn to count on ourselves. And then opposite is true, right? When we don't follow through, when we lack the discipline, it creates distrust. It creates or reiterates an old story about not being capable, not being capable enough to follow through with something. Not being smart enough, not being responsible enough, whatever it is, creates distrust. And it also creates a pattern of self-abandonment, right? So this word, it's a tough word, and it's a tough thing to create, discipline, especially self-induced discipline, right? Moving towards your own personal goals, dreams, intentions. And no wonder it's such a tough word, or we have such a problem with it sometimes, is because one of the negative definitions is literally to train people to obey through force and punishment or something like that. It's like, it literally means to punish, right? So no wonder we have this hard time with this word and with implementing the word in our lives. It's looked at as a punishment. But I want to help reframe that a little bit here, because obviously the other side of it, like I said, is an act of love. But when I think about the word discipline, truly, and when I think about it and hear it now, I think about yoga and the discipline of yoga, right? The practice of yoga. It is showing up time and time again on that, rolling that mat out, getting on the mat, breath, movement, meditation. But also, it is... there is a word, really a principle in yoga philosophy called tapas. So tapas can mean heat. Tapas can mean discipline. But one of my favorite definitions for it is by one of my favorite yoga authors and widely worldwide known yoga teacher, Donna Fari. She talks about in her book Yoga, Body, Mind, and Soul, explains tapas as being burning enthusiasm. And I think that's so dead on for a couple of reasons. The burning, it's like that fire inside of us, right? So that heat inside of us, which is so necessary to create energy, right? And if you think about a fire, right, starting the fire, as she talks about in her book, is the hardest part. But keeping the fire lit, tending to the flames is easier, right? That's easier. So keeping going, then letting it blow out and having it start again, right? So think about this as a metaphor. When we start something new, it feels good. It takes that energy, right? And we get excited about it maybe, or maybe, maybe we don't. We're just going through the motions. And it's easier to miss a day to get right back on the horse than to miss a day, beat ourselves up for it, and not do it again for another week. It's going to take even more energy to start back up again. So I love that. But one of the biggest reasons I love tapas and this definition, the burning enthusiasm, is because it talks about not so much the action of discipline, but the energy behind it. And I think that's so important. And I'll tell you what I mean. So when I ask you, I want you to think about your resolution. I want you to think about what it is you're kind of setting out to do this year. Maybe it could be small, it could be big. Maybe, you're starting a business. Maybe you're trying to lose weight. Maybe you're starting to learn how to cook, starting a podcast. So think about whatever it is. And now I'm going to ask you, why? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing it? And I want you to think about and feel like literally, what does it feel like in your body when you think about answering this question? When you think about why? Does it feel exciting? Does it feel like hopeful? Does it feel like you're a little anxious, but like it's an excitement anxious? Do you feel heavy, dread, pressure? Okay, this is something to look at, right, when we're thinking about implementing these new things. Now, of course, the goal itself might need a few steps to get there, right? And those steps might not be the funnest thing, right? They're going to be hard. They're going to be challenging. But when you think about the why, that should bring up a certain energy and your answer. So what is your answer to why are you doing this? And if your answer comes from ego, right? So let's say, again, back to weight loss, that's a big one this year, in the new year. If your answer is like, because I want to get this guy at work and he won't notice me because I'm bigger. Or, I want my parents to stop criticizing me. Okay. That's kind of a low vibrational reason in my, but if your answer is like, I want to feel strong and healthy. I want to live a long life as long as I can. I have kids, my family I want to show up for, or there's so much I want to do and help other, like that's an answer coming from your higher self. So we want to take a look at if my answer to my why I'm doing this new thing is coming from higher self or coming from ego. Because if it's coming from your higher self, your chances of sticking with it and accomplishing it are definitely higher than if they're coming from ego. I'm not saying your ego can't push you, because it can, for sure. But the sustaining energy needed, the tapas, the burning enthusiasm, right? You feel the difference. You see what I'm talking about here. And on the other hand, I want to think about and ask you, get you to think about it, and I want to ask you, when you think about this new thing that you want to start, begin, learn, whatever it is there resistance around it? Most likely, right? And is that resistance fear? Right? So let's take starting a new business. I have a goal of starting a new business, and the discipline needed is I need to make 10 outreach calls a day. But I'm really hesitant to do that because I'm afraid of talking to people. I'm afraid of asking for help. I'm afraid of being vulnerable, right? Maybe it's something like that. And if we look at the fear, then we can kind of trace that fear back because it's likely old, right? It's likely very old. And if you can take a look at that and see that you're allowing this old fear to stand in the way of your potential, right? It kind of puts things into perspective. Maybe you were bullied and you were told you were stupid. Maybe you asked for help as a youngster to parents or caretakers or teachers, and they denied you of help or told you your ideas were stupid. So speaking up or starting something new is really terrifying, right? Those are real. They happened. But it's something to look at in a way for you to take accountability and help yourself find the burning enthusiasm in what you're doing and maybe redefine the why. All right. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me. So, and this is something that I was thinking about recently. And it was intriguing as I start to think back. So I always had a big goal, like when I was younger, of like, my big goal was I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to, make a living and be an actress, a working actress. And my why was that it was in my bones. I was passionate about it. I wanted to connect with others. I wanted to move people through this medium. I wanted to create and perform and bring people joy and experiences and tell stories. So I felt that was pretty aligned. But for me, the fear really got in the way. The fear really presented itself in self-sabotaging ways. And the fear was that I had been carrying with for a very long time since childhood, was that I wasn't capable of succeeding, that I wasn't capable of taking care of myself, of being an adult, that I couldn't handle success. I wasn't responsible enough to handle what came along with success. And the more I thought about what it meant to be an actress, I knew things in my life would have to change, and I didn't really want to change things, So our brains wired for safety and comfort, right? Big career in acting, very scary compared to a small little life and doing the same old thing over and over again. Well, I half-assedly went out to LA, moved myself out there with this dream in the back of my head. And one day at 31, I woke up and I looked back, and nowhere in my life was I closer to this dream. I hadn't moved myself maybe even an inch over the last 10 years that I was out there trying towards my goal. Not really. And that was really painful. It was really painful. And the pain I felt of staying another second in that moment and not moving forward was greater than the fear of what the unknown was in going after my dreams. Right? So I'll say that again. That the pain of staying still and not going after that dream became more uncomfortable than the fear I had of actually succeeding at it. And so I decided to do something about it. Right? That was a motivation. There was some tapas, some heat there. And what I realized is, regardless of the goal, and even to get there or to get close to it, I had to create and set up my life to support that woman that I wanted to be in as that actress. And I think a lot of times our fear behind taking on something new is that it requires us to level up, that it requires us to be a new version of ourselves, right? A more responsible, more capable, whatever it is. And we don't know if we're ready for that. we don't know if we haven't met that person and version of us, and we don't know what comes along with that. And so that was very true for me. But when I looked at it, I realized in my case, no, I'm not going to go another second not moving forward towards goals and dreams that I had. But I knew I had to start small, and I had to start supporting my life in all of the ways. So yes, I had to get into acting classes more seriously. I had to study more seriously. I needed to create community around with people that had, like-minded dreams. But more importantly, I needed to set up my very basic day-to-day life to support me. So I needed to really take care of my health, excuse me, my health, my mental health, in order to have this vessel that could show up, right, and work long hours. I needed to prioritize sleep, which I definitely did not do for 10 years, right? I was partying my ass off till the wee hours of the morning. And I had to go to the gym. I needed to, again, sleep well, eat well, so that when the time came, I could be 100% ready 100% of the time, right? I needed to take care of some of these fears and limiting beliefs that I had dragging me down. And that required therapy. That required spiritual outlets and community groups that helped to support my mind, right? And my heart and my soul in becoming this person that could handle this dream that I had. It started even smaller than that. I mean, I would wake up and just make my bed. I would make my bed. I would take a walk. I would write down what I was feeling in a journal every morning, or I would do gratitude. Super simple things like this. And what happened is these things, the small, the medium, and the big things, started to lay down this foundation to support me in getting to the next step of the goal or dream. And here's what's cool about this, is that once I kind of established this foundation, I didn't want to act anymore. My why had changed, right? And I had fallen in love with spirituality, yoga, self-mastery, physical wellness. And I fell in love with yoga. And it was so funny because, and I became a yoga teacher, but the discipline required of me to practice and to train to become a teacher, and then also to go to school to get my master's in spiritual psychology and become a coach and to heal and to do all this work. The discipline required was so immense, but I had it already because I was doing all of these smaller steps, on the way to what I was thinking is supporting myself as an actress, but it supported me into this new path. Right? I would never have thought that would have happened, but I was ready to take on more. And I knew I could trust, because I had built this self-trust. I had built this reliance on self. I knew I could not let myself down. And it was like the greatest gift I ever had. And I had a lot of success and a lot of opportunities, again, because I was primed and ready. And for 12 years, I taught teachers, I taught classes, I taught workshops, I taught retreats. I wrote in publications, and the energy, the tapas, the burning enthusiasm was so great. I didn't even feel like I was working, right? I was doing it. I was sacrificing whatever I needed to. I was working day and night, creating things from writing things from scratch for these programs that I was creating. It was just like pouring out of me. It was so natural. And then another interesting thing happened. And this was about 12, 13 years into teaching, is that burning enthusiasm quieted down. It started to dissolve. It started to get less and less. And I was like, oh man, I got to pay attention to this. And I knew my why am I doing this was changing again, almost in a full circle moment, but it was becoming bigger, right? And no, I didn't want to go back to acting, but I knew I wanted to start creating I wanted to start speaking more, and I want to start to connecting people. And granted, being a yoga teacher fulfilled, so I was able to tell stories, connect with people, and do the things that I was craving being an actress, but in this format. And it was so fulfilling, and it really utilized and honored so many of the things inside of me that needed to be utilized and honored. And then here we are now teaching yoga for 12 years, 13 years, and I'm starting to lose energy in that and wanting to get to do something bigger with my voice, and here we are with the podcast. You know, we started a production company, started creating documentaries and the podcast. And as I looked back recently, again, that foundation, that the pathway, the pavement that I lined up through discipline, and maybe the discipline I thought was going this way to be an actress, and then the discipline was going this way to be a yoga teacher and a spiritual coach. It all led me to this. I wouldn't have known that, but I did the work. I took the action steps, the next indicated steps, and I built confidence. I built a new skill set. I learned. I had so much enthusiasm and excitement doing it that it was just a joy. And then all of a sudden, here I am. But it's not, the discipline is why I'm here, you know, in this position, and who knows where this will lead. So I think as we look at some of these resolutions and these goals or dreams, if they're bigger than that, it's like, we don't need to know the full story. But if there is that calling inside of you to start something new, to play an instrument, to do that, just start and check the why behind it, right? Is the why enthusiastic? Is the answer, you know, from self, or is it from ego? And look, maybe you need to take a few egoic steps to get to the higher self why, and that's okay too. But yeah, so I also want to just kind of mention while we're talking about this is that the reason I said that is we don't need to have all the answers. We don't need to know. And we also need to understand that when we decide to go towards a dream, a goal, an intention, as small or big as they are, we're going to have challenges. This is not a straight line all the way to the top. It is not. I can tell you that from experience. It is a zigzag, few steps forwards, few steps back. So how can we be with ourselves in a new way this year when we fall off a little bit, when we make a mistake, when we miss a day of training, or we, you know, something happens that could take us off course of these goals, dreams, or intentions, right? Can we be with ourselves in a more gentle, loving way? Can we accept that those kind of mishaps, missteps, backward steps, falls are part of the process? That's a huge lesson, you know, and that not everything is going to be perfect. Not everything is going to look the way you think it is. But sometimes we just need to start, right? So as you continue on and look at your goals and dreams, which I really would love to hear about them, I have an exercise for you to do that actually helps to create that kind of enthusiastic energy behind the intention that you have to do that. And that is to think about the version of you that is doing those things, accomplishing those things. Like, who is that? What are they wearing? Like, where are they living? How do they wake up? You know, what do they eat? What are their habits? Who is around them? And start to visualize this version of yourself and write it down. And if you're so inclined, send it to me. I would love to read and support. Support, another thing, when you're about to go into a disciplinary, you know, move towards goals and dreams. Support. Like, maybe you have somebody that's can be in the trenches with you. Maybe you just need to call on you know, family or friends, or again, like I had spiritual community. I had community in my acting schools, in my master's degree program, and like I had support to hold the space in the container for all of the sides of me that will come forward trying to do this new thing, right? And so I'm here. if you want to send me your intentions, or if you want to send me that vision of yourself, you're writing, what that vision of yourself is, please, it's jessica@worthythepodcast.com. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, let's be gentle with ourselves. Let's have an incredible 2026, filled with abundance and love and acceptance, kindness, all of that good stuff, okay? I'm so grateful for your support with Worthy this year. It has been a dream come true and a lot of work and discipline to get here. But my enthusiasm behind this podcast is just oozing out of me. I've never had more fun, and I feel like I'm in perfect alignment. So right now, we'll see where it goes. Okay, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Happy New Year, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of Worthy the Podcast. Our goal is to build a community, and we do that through people like you who listen, subscribe, and most importantly, share with someone you care about. Be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening, as well as our YouTube channel. And if this episode resonated with you, leave a review. We want to hear from you. Thanks for being here, and remember, you've always been enough. Period. This podcast is meant to inspire and educate, but I'm not a licensed therapist or medical professional. Everything shared here is based on personal experience and perspective, so take what resonates and leave the rest.